I wonder who will beat us today. Some early action with aces. Let's see if he jams. Nope. It's completely fine. Righty. Jack high. Pretty easy bluff. Pretty easy bluff. Pretty large sizing. I don't think we need a call there unless he... Wow, this river bet. How often does he have a 10 though? Like, rarely ever. 10 boost is a bit loose though, pre. Well, this board, it's kind of interesting. I mean, ace queen typically you'll be calling with the backdoor flush draw, so I think we'll go for the check holder. So right now I've been having some reasonable results the past few days after the run bad. Right now I'm still deciding on a few kind of considerations in terms of where I want to go with poker. One idea I have right now is obviously trying to get a bit more into playing PLO, which could make some sense given that I have access to some good PLO games, especially like the one at the start being particularly soft. Just gonna be calling down here. That's a pretty bad c-bet, I'd say, and also a pretty bad flop call. I'm calling, well, I'm checking turn obviously because, well, King X is definitely supposed to be more in his range than my range when it comes to check raising. But like c-betting and then calling a flop raise is pretty terrible with King Queen specifically. Like it just doesn't make sense. So I think like in general we obviously if we have ace queen we're just check calling and then check calling again against the sizings he picked, because well when he takes that line we have really good card removal if in case he does actually have king queen, and we have one of our best kickers with the ace, so I really like it though. We could probably mix in a check raise with this kind of hand, but I'm pretty comfortable with the call. I think we can 3-bet or call this one. He is 50 BB, which makes me lean a little bit towards calling. Pretty good turn for us with ace 10. And of course going to be betting on the larger side once he does decide to check on that turn. Against this size I'm just going to be folding ace 3 and could also check raise sometimes. So, what do I want to talk about today? Well, as you guys know from the title, I am kind of asking the question, well, can you still make it in poker? A lot of ways to interpret that one, depending on how you're thinking about it. I mean, we could even think about it in terms of like the question, like how do you actually make a living, or how do you play poker as a source of income, that kind of stuff. And is it possible to make enough to sustain your livelihood if you're just playing this game? So a lot of that depends on kind of the stakes that you're playing, your level of skill, the kinds of games you also have access to, and that really has quite a significant impact on your ability to sustain an income in this game. So obviously before I actually decided to go pro, I actually spent a bit of time mapping everything out and being like, okay, well, if I compare this to getting, let's say, a traditional job, how well or how worse off might I be from deciding to go this way with poker? And what kind of minimum stakes do I need to be playing if I'm going to try to make enough money to live off this, or what do my expenses need to look like? Ultimately, like, depending on where you live, it can vary a lot whether it does make sense to try and do this or whether it doesn't. So obviously in Australia or in a country like the US, there's probably many situations where if you're living in one of the main cities like I am, it might not be exactly the most viable choice, because the amount you can make at a certain level of skill might not be enough to offset living expenses. So if I had a fuck ton of living expenses, it would be very difficult to get by playing this game consistently. So different things that you need to think about. So let's talk about the level of skill and the type of stakes that you can be playing first, obviously. Then we can talk about the amount of volume you might need to put in when you're playing, and then we can get into some other stuff as well. So in regards to level of skill, I think the general trend has been that this game has been getting harder and harder, especially to kind of climb up in stakes in. So if you're playing micro stakes, the games are obviously very, very easy to beat still, because there's still a lot of bad players everywhere, but as you try to move up, everyone's starting to get better. There's less easy money in the game than there used to be, so there's kind of more difficulty in obtaining win rate. Not that that's impossible right now, of course. It's still very much possible to play very well and outplay your opponents. But there are obviously a lot of barriers to getting to that level of skill. So in terms of the skill aspect of things, I'd say that depends on the person and how much time they're willing to put into things. The main thing I'm noticing is that there's a ton more resources out there, so ultimately it's easier to study and play this game and get to a pretty solid level. Here obviously just to clear it all in when we have top 2. So what I mean by that, right now there's tons of people like myself streaming, so if you're starting out, you can start to learn how some of the better players are playing in certain situations. There's tons of books out there, there's tons of videos, there's subscription sites, training sites. Basically there's everything already out there to get you to learn what it's like to play at a pretty decent level. But getting it to that point and implementing everything is a bit of a different story. Here we don't want to be holding a 9 when we call down, so just gonna fold the top pair with the 9, since we are concerned about blocking potential bluffs that they can have, and also not having a good enough kicker where they would be value betting worse top pairs. So that's kind of what's leading me towards just folding there, even though he's betting half pot. So skill-wise, pretty easy to get to a somewhat high or somewhat basic understanding of the game. Like the learning curve has been kind of made easier for a certain portion of the game, so everyone should basically know how to play pre-flop reasonably, understand pot odds, understand like ideas such as value betting and bluffing, and even like some basic game theory stuff like minimum defense frequency is gonna be somewhat more like well known already. So those concepts about value bet to bluff ratio, all that stuff, that's already all out there. The main difference in skill is just being able to understand and apply those in a more practical way compared to your competitors. And also exploitative play is a bit more out there, but it's a less structured way of playing than GTO kind of game theory optimal type of strategy, but it's still very possible to learn how to implement it correctly. So that's kind of like what I have to say about skill. Like, there's still a big difference in terms of how I play compared to how other people are playing in terms of skill, just because of how much more I know in terms of the more nuanced spots, the more math-based type of situations, as well as some of the exploitative adjustments that you can employ when you have a good understanding of those mathematical implications, such as knowing when you can overbluff or when you should underbluff due to people playing in a certain way. After that, then there's the mental game, there's the amount of volume that people play as well that you need to consider. So just because you're really good at the game doesn't mean you can like do well financially from it. Because well, let's say you're just starting out and you have like no role, like it would take a bit of time to get to a point where your bankroll can help you sustain a living and while you can continue to grow it. So that is probably the main challenge that most people will have, and a personal recommendation would be to probably go and work and supplement that income when you're starting out. If you're trying to be professional in this, like it's much easier to supplement your income while trying to grow your role and while you're also learning, because just you shouldn't have an expectation of making it very, very quickly. It's just unrealistic given that you're usually competing against people that have kind of years of experience above you, so it is going to take time to surpass them in terms of your level of skill. For me, obviously it did. It took a while, but I eventually got there because I realized that this game, well, while there are still people who are playing professionally from a while back, some of them become complacent and some of them basically just haven't kind of caught up with the pace of things. So if you think about poker as a market, it's become a bit more efficient, just like most markets start out. Most markets start out inefficient, and then as people realize that there are opportunities in these markets, people start to arbitrage that inefficiency. So I'm using very financial terms, but it's a good way to kind of think about things. So whenever there is an edge to be made in a certain situation, people will take that opportunity. So in terms of like poker, in terms of gaming, there's ways to create an edge. Same with trading. You guys know about me and follow me on Twitter or came from Twitter, then I'm gonna bring up trading concepts very, very often, because that's like the second thing I do. Basically just having an understanding of that tells you straight away, well, edges are gonna get thinner and thinner over time, no matter what kind of field you're in, no matter if it's like programming. In terms of like the skill gap, there will be more and more people that get better and better at something, and eventually there will be what you can call a barrier to entry to that market. So if we think about poker as a market, again using that same analogy, then we can see that the barrier to entry is going to get higher and higher as a larger amount of people get good at this game. So the barrier to entry, let's say 10 years ago, would be just you could beat this game if you understood like the basics and the pot odds and like the really basic starting hand type stuff pre-flop. If you knew all that and you played tight when this game started out, then you would already have quite a substantial edge over a random opponent, because this game was quite new. Here I'm just folding. So what that means is the barrier to entry now for like being able to play this game professionally has increased. So that means that you'll have to invest more time in terms of educating yourself, in terms of learning, studying, applying everything, to get to a certain level of skill where you can actually start to benefit significantly financially off this game. So in the past it could be like people could run their roll up playing free rolls, but now it's very unlikely that that will happen, and if it does, it will usually take quite a lot of time, or it would take some level of intellect as well. So you might just have to be smarter and work harder and be more talented than other people to actually catch up and break past that barrier. And many ways to break past that barrier. I've mentioned a ton of resources already, and let's not forget coaching being a potential beneficial resource, but there are basically more increased costs. So just like in the past, where people didn't really need a college degree or a university degree to actually start like working as a professional in a particular field, people now actually are required to or expected to have a degree as a minimum before they apply for certain jobs. Or sometimes it's work experience, or sometimes it's potentially like more than just a degree. Maybe they need a certain amount in terms of how their grades look. So their GPA might need to be quite high to even be able to apply for a job. These are basically increasing requirements in terms of skill that are occurring because, well, more and more of society is becoming more and more educated. So if we take that into account when we're thinking about poker, well, there's more resources out there, and now to win you're expected to be aware of and have an understanding of those resources, so that you have that basic level of skill to start with when you're playing poker and to actually make money from the game. Kiza asks, how is the whiskey? Is it going to make you less boring? Well, I don't know. We're talking about a specific topic today, so quite a bunch of stuff to go off on. It was pretty quality whiskey. I mean, I'll probably do a blog post afterwards. But yeah, had a lot of fun. So if we continue to think about that analogy in terms of poker, well, I've explained what types of basic skills you'll need to have some degree of success in this game. Knowing that it is competitive does make it less incentivized for you to probably break in or try to break in to playing poker professionally, but if you're really like interested in this game, then you'll find a way to do it. Same with everything else. If you're interested in the kind of field that like you can invest tons of time into, then you're probably going to do well in it. Who are you talking to? I am basically just addressing a particular topic today, which is like this idea of playing professionally. I think that there's like tons to go off of. I'm just giving up the betting this turn for value against the big blind. We could jam or we could call. I'm probably just gonna call as a default because I'm not too fond of jamming here. Need you as my life coach. Well, that's what I'm here for, right? So he took a pretty funky line here. Generally, given that my range is quite strong in this situation and I'm quite well protected by nut hands, I don't think I need to continue with King Queen. So we raise the UTG, he check raises, and then check raises again on the turn. Typically somewhat more nutted kind of line that you won't see being bluffed enough on the river. So that's kind of why I'm going with the fold there. Obviously we had decent enough equity to call the turn check raise with the flush opportunity there. So it makes a lot of sense. After 3 years of working, I'm going to end up hopping jobs. If I'm good enough at poker, I'll take a year off and play. You think I should? I'd have to be beating like 500 and 0 for it to be justified. Well, I mean, let's think about it this way. Of course, like when you're starting, you'll need a way to build your role while you're learning. So job makes a ton of sense, right? Now, did you deposit money on Iggy or did you make map? Well, I didn't deposit any. I've actually been withdrawing, to be honest. I've withdrawn at least like 1 to 2K a week. I guess like the people who are watching today are kind of like just chilling, which is completely fine, to each their own. But like the way the stream is gonna be is it's gonna be a bit more chill. It's gonna be a bit more of me talking. So let's get back to what I was saying. Here I'm just gonna fold. It's not value betting worse. It's probably not bluffing enough either. So as I was saying, it's important to supplement your income when you're starting out and then continue growing and learning and getting better at the game. And then eventually, if you've put in enough time and it also gives you an opportunity to make money that is less variable. So obviously you can add to your role or you can invest that additional money that you're making from something else into learning the game better through buying software and whatnot. Pretty good to have a life outside of poker as well until you're really sure that it's what you want to do. It's quite difficult to decide that until you've played a pretty decent sample, and as a result of that, like, seriously, I'd say you need to play at least 1,000,000 hands before you really like get a good feel for how this game is, what kind of variance that you can expect, like all of that stuff. Check raised. I'm going to be calling here, of course, with the additional free roll card of a free coming, as well as this set being possible for us. Against this size being deeper, we can call again. It's up on the smaller side. So we're going with the check call, well, bet call. But don't need to be calling down on the river. I'm not sure if you actually need to like get to 500 and over. I mean, maybe you do, but you can kind of math everything out. You can find out whether a particular stake will be worth it for you to be playing at given a certain win rate. Because I do think this game is definitely more of a better game to be played recreationally rather than professionally. Like, the approaches are completely different. If you're playing professionally, you just have to manage your risk a lot differently to if you're playing recreationally. So that can include having stricter bankroll management, or it can include having more of a safety net when you're playing poker. And 1,000,000 hands is kind of like just the start as well to things. There's still like tons and tons to be learned even after you've played 1,000,000 hands. Because it says I'm going to be a CPA with a master's degree, not quitting to play poker. That would be insane. It would just be 1 year. Yeah. Makes sense. Makes sense. You're asking, am I backing from Raise Your Edge? I'm not sure what that means. I mean, I'm a coach on the Discord. I help run it. It's pretty solid. The main thing you need to consider and realize is obviously the opportunity cost. I think pursuing like a career like a CPA is obviously something reasonable and kind of more traditional, but it can get expensive as well, right? If you're paying for tuition, those can be somewhat expensive costs that you have to recoup in some way or pay back later, right? If you're paying it upfront or if you're taking a loan out to do it, can be a bit difficult. Of course, like taking like a year off to play poker would be a fun way to do it. Could also try to play while doing work, but I think you'll notice that like a lot of people that have work will kind of feel drained afterwards and just not be motivated to do much else outside of work, because it is pretty difficult. So you'll probably not be able to get in like as much time as you think you can, and that will affect how much you'll be able to improve. Of course, like most people have more time than they think, or know how to use correctly anyway. Almost done already, yeah. That's good, that's good. This one's a fold. Graduate this December and CPA exams will be done by then. Nice. It's always interesting for me, like if for some reason I just don't think I want to continue playing this game, then I can go ahead and go and find a job with the good degree that I have. Unfortunately, this site doesn't have auto top-up, so I have to reload. Sick poker room, right? It's pretty soft though. Pretty soft poker room. So depends on whether you wanna deal with this kind of software or not. Versus min raise, we can make an exception and call here with this kind of hand. 8's obviously a pretty default type of call. It's interesting to also kind of consider what your options are if you actually really do want to go pro. I know someone that has moved from one country to Thailand just so that they can play professionally, so they can have low expenses and have a pretty solid lifestyle. Because in that kind of country, it's actually pretty chill. Folding here. Did I set up my alert box correctly? I thought I got. Okay, well I'm gonna have to fix that really quickly. There we go. Alright. This one's a fold. Okay, we flop trips. Pretty nice. Pretty nice result. I'm not in Thailand, if you're wondering that, by the way. But yeah, it's a very reasonable place to move to if you're trying to play poker. Same with there's probably tons of places you can go where your expenses are lower than a big country or a big city. You just have way less expenses, and your cost of living, because it's lower, well, it'll afford you more, even if you're not spending that much money. So you can probably if you think about it, you can probably live playing like 25 or 50 an hour if you put in enough volume to live in some of those smaller cities in the world, some of the smaller countries. I mean, that's just how it is, if you ask me. Just makes it like really fucking easy. So Australia is pretty expensive. That's why you need to be playing quite a lot higher than 25 or 50 an hour to actually like make more than minimum wage. Even to make more than like a grad job, for example, it's a bit more difficult. Here I think we can just fold. I'd say like you shouldn't even consider doing it unless you're playing at like 100 an hour. It's absolute suicide because long term, because you're going to quit poker at 30 years old with 0 skills and you'll be working shit job to shit job for the rest of your life. I mean, I think you're underestimating how much freedom poker gives you if you're doing it right. You have so much time on your hands if you're planning out your day and working everything out correctly to actually go and learn those skills. You have so much more freedom than other people do. Like for me personally, I'm learning tons of new skills every now and then. I live with my parents. Right now I'm staying with them. Obviously it's just like a lot better to do that until I have more of a like just more money to actually maintain like living expenses and risk. Also, why are you wearing a hoodie again? It's summer. It's winter here, mate. But I don't know if you're like joking or not. Australia weather right now is on the colder side. How old are my parents? Well, they're on the older side, obviously. How many bedrooms? Getting a lot of personal questions there. It's a joke because it's winter. I'm from Australia. I live in Sydney. If you didn't know that. I'm not really interested in trying to bluff him off a strong range. It's gonna be kind of overpair heavy. Who's Meal? Actually, wait, that's the guy that like posted on my 2+2 at some point, right? I think so. Does Australia get snow? If you go to certain parts of it, it does. You know, you like that joke. High IQ joke, Melling didn't get it. High IQ plays. Should make a bunch of poker clips of people punting off the stack and then calling it high IQ plays. Do you know a girl in a wheelchair whose name starts with J? She's also China, but no, I don't. I do not. I play live a bunch. Australia's way too expensive, gotta get out. I mean, when I have less living expenses because, well, my parents have a property and I can stay in it because they are good enough to not kick me out, then yeah, pretty good result for me in terms of like keeping my expenses low. What's my 2 + 2? Just like, well, that's like my razor edge. 2 + 2 is somewhere in the description panel. But yeah, like I have my expenses are much lower than a lot of people who have to pay rent. Obviously, I could actually move out and pay rent and electricity and whatnot by myself, but I would rather wait till I have a larger role to do that and just invest my money both in playing and also in trading crypto and doing a lot of other stuff like that. So you bring back slots. Well, my parents aren't always in Australia, so I often have the house to myself, and I mean they don't really care if I bring people over. So I bring friends over and girls over, and it's not an issue. Play poker for a living, moved to Colombia in South America. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Can go on downswing, break evens for so long and it won't matter. You play MTT. Whoa, MTTs, bro. The variance. I actually played MTTs a bunch before I decided to move to cash, realizing that the hourly rate here is better if you're good. Also, this site, man, this site's a luxury to be playing on, even though the software's not that great in terms of the play pool. I'm getting so sick of my bags. Well, you've probably been buying the wrong shit. That would explain why you can say dirty words. Whoa. Better not use the language around my parents. Oh. They don't mind. They're not like strict or anything, they're pretty chill. I mean, when I first told them I'm gonna do this professionally, I was kind of like, alright, give me a bit of time. Just give me a year. And it helped that I banked a tournament. Like, I banked a live tourney, and that helped a lot. Because it kind of just validated, oh, I can probably do this. Because for some reason, like, other people outside of poker have a mindset that it's like that tournaments for some reason are more credible than cash games, or that cash games are more gambly than tournaments, because tournaments have like a level of legitimacy to them where it's like a sport competition where you buy in, and if you come first you're like somehow good, right? You must be good if you won a tournament. What do you think about zone plus regular? I like both. I think zone's obviously more difficult and lower win rate than it is to play reg tables, but zone's pretty good for the format. Like I'm pretty sure I can be winning at like 15 BB per 100 playing reg tables at this site, because they seem quite a lot softer than zone. I mean, anonymous zone, I'm still winning at a pretty decent win rate, so I'm around 10 BB per 100 EV. But yeah, it's tougher than reg tables for sure. It's just that you can get more volume in this way, which I quite like. Do you really feel that these games are that soft? Well, I feel like they are, but that's just for me. Like, having played 200 NL on Stars, you feel like this is just really like a lot better than that site. Like, you can easily have double the win rate playing here than playing on Stars. Although you'll get less hands in per hour, obviously, and the softwares takes a bit of time to adjust to. So yeah, if we're talking living expenses, I would probably move if I had to live on my own to a different country. Just gonna bet half pot. We have a lot of A6 in our range here when we take this kind of line. Get bluff catched by a straight, which is pretty reasonable. How many hours a week do you grind? Something like 30 hours. I don't think you can play like that much if you're doing poker and not study. So it's also like tougher than like a regular job, so doing more than 40 hours can be difficult. Obviously I could pull it off, but I'm doing other stuff on the side as well. So spending less time than a lot of people in terms of playing. Also because I have a bunch of time allocated to coaching as well, so rather than just playing, doing a bunch of different types of stars. Different types of stuff, I mean. Any issues cashing out? Heard horror stories of never receiving funds. Wow. I personally have not had any issues with cash outs since I'm cashing out in crypto. It only usually takes 1 to 3 days. Money comes out pretty quickly. They pay you. What do you think about that Broken Stars guy's game who streams and plays same games? I haven't really watched him, so I've like probably watched like 15 minutes of him playing. I mean, he seems alright. He seems alright. He's probably a decent winning player in this kind of player pool. You can live with me in America. If I decide to move, maybe. I've actually thought about just like, once I have a bunch more money that is like free cash flow and capital, then I can start to travel around a bit more, but I have quite a lot of my money locked up in investment. And also some allocated to poker, of course. How many coaching clients do I have? I mean, at the moment, probably somewhere along the lines of like 6 different people that I'm working with on a regular basis. Had some people come and go. Ace queen just gonna fold. How much for you to coach me? Check the description. So look in the panel below the video and you can kind of get an idea of what I teach. I've had my fair share of experience playing all kinds of different formats. Damn, I'm reading a blog. You and your GF broke up. Do you miss her? I still miss my ex 2 years later. I mean, we still keep in contact, but it's not really a thing anymore. So it's not like a terrible breakup where you like never see each other again or anything like that. But yeah, there are some things that I miss. But just moving on. Just hook up with someone else, problem solved. I mean, for me, solving the problem was developing more self-awareness around kind of how I feel, also spending a lot of time doing meditation. So I guess my perspective on life is, I'm not sure how I'd say it. It's just like I feel like I've learned a lot of things in my only 21 years. I highly suggest you don't keep in contact. Horrible idea. That's why it's taken me 2 years now. Yeah, we basically did not keep in contact for the first 2 months, but now now it's completely fine. What do you miss about her? I think for me it's kind of the intimacy that you can have with someone that I miss. Facing a raise, I'm just going to be folding this. Started playing on these poker apps as I love Twitch, with local clubs, yeah. Pretty good games. Pretty good games. Do I use HUD? I do use Holder Manager to track my results. And I do a ton of work with people in terms of database analysis. As I mentioned in the past, I did an information systems degree, and a lot of that is about using databases. Nice, win a stack. So I guess you can say some of the database analysis stuff that you learn from that degree helps with poker. I think we can check back some of our straight draws on this board against a short stack, since it's probably a better way to realize our equity. Voting. It's always great when someone's drawing dead against you. Ooh, money! That's what we're here for. Which live 20 did you bank? Runners buying cash. It was at a casino, Sunday deep stack, $550 tournament. I don't know how many runners, but a bunch of runners. Just gonna jam the turn. You could also obviously bet smaller, but just going for the repping the draw line. And he calls with Queen 7, which, I mean, like, he shouldn't even 3-bet pre, and then he calls a 4-bet, which is just insane. Running bad as us. I mean, you guys have not been through run bad. I play Hyper Syngos. I've probably ran like over 100 binds on the EV at some point. So it's pretty insane. Like the dollar EV amount was like over 10k on the EV. I can't find the fold button on Stars client for some reason, so here to find some clues. If you visit Oz, is it okay if I visit you? I mean, we can go out and do something. Yo, I gotta get in these, yeah. Good games. Good games. This is a bit of a weird spot. I mean, you could probably triple range merge here, but this hand's just a check. What I'm saying when I'm talking about triple range merge is you can jam the river to either get called by worse or fold out better. Or also get called by better and fold out better. So a bunch of random shit. You can totally snipe me with the 1 minute delay. Up to you. Have I played hypers on Ignition? I have. I'm kind of concerned with collusion though because it's anonymous. So there's always some opportunity in these kinds of games for a little bit of collusion. Like, no one's stopping someone from just like calling another dude on Skype and telling them your whole cards while you're playing. That's what I'm concerned about when I play on some of those app games. Because you just never know if someone could be doing that. So that's always a concern in those kinds of games. So where were we with the actual like discussing can you still make it in poker kind of thing? Hours. So hours is, it's dependent on your personality, of course. Some people can play a ton without burning out, and that will definitely increase the amount of money that you can make. So if you can grind like 60 hours a week or something, then it's gonna make you more money than someone who can play 40. So just think about that. Heard of PP Poker? Yeah, I have. I actually played a bunch on it. Everyone I know is crushing it. PP Poker is fun. Everyone is on PP Poker being like, oh yeah, great game. Great games. I can hook you up with a club if you guys actually want to. Excuse me. If you guys actually want to join one. So you just send me a private message if you're actually interested in joining a club for that. The games that run there, well, there's a bunch of PLO and then there's a bunch of Hold'em as well, so I think it's like 60 NL AUD that usually runs. I don't play on it like too much, and then there's like some 200 NL that runs as well. I don't play on it too much, but when I do, like, pretty good games. How did Limitless go from not knowing jack shit about poker to playing nosebleeds in 2 years? What does he do better that we can't? Analyze it this way, basically. He's already a good professional athlete. I think one thing that good professional athletes have over like other people in terms of learning a skill like poker is 1, discipline, 2, like being willing to put in the time, and 3, understanding like how to actually develop their skill set. So that's probably like a mix of those reasons. Depends on your club. The rake is obviously on the high side, but then you can also get a rake back. And the games are good enough that you shouldn't really care about the rake because it's definitely beatable. Like, you're basically playing live poker on an app. So that's how soft those games are. If you've actually played live, it's like, wow, holy shit, these guys are so bad. And then you go and play on the app, you're like, oh, it's the same guys I'm playing at the casino. So you're essentially saying someone who watches you isn't going to be limitless because it's a waste of time. I'm not saying that, I'm just saying that, like, if you really want to do well in this game, you have to have like the right set of skills to like learn this game quickly, and I'm saying that he had those set of skills. You have no idea how much he probably invested in like running sims, like time-wise, playing the game. Like, I'm pretty sure he was just playing hours and hours and hours of this game, and I think a lot of people aren't able to put in that much time without burning out. So it's amazing that he was able to do that. Like, anyone that makes it just puts in a fuck ton of time. Like, for me, I didn't have the luxury of doing that while I was pursuing my degree. So now that I have finished my degree, I'm able to put in a lot more time to play. and that's actually helped me in terms of my skill like a shit ton, because it's much easier to learn one thing, focus on one thing, than it is to do like multiple things. So what I'm saying is it requires sacrifice. Can't watch a stream and learn, and well, watching the stream is part of learning, of course. That's what this is here for. How do you make deposits and withdrawals on the app? Would PM on here be appropriate to chat more about them? I mean, yeah, you can ask me about them on Twitch through PM. Typically, like the way it's done right now is it's done through Facebook. So you can transfer either, like if you're in Australia, like I'm pretty sure they do bank account transfers. They also do crypto deposits. They can work out different ways to do it, but ultimately, like with the apps, it's just like having someone that you trust to like hold on to your money and not run away with it. So it's good if you actually know the person running the club well. So going back to talking about Limitless, I assume as an athlete that he is quite disciplined in terms of like the type of routine that he had when he was running it up, when he was grinding it through the stakes. Obviously you will need some run good to make it quickly, but you can overcome a lot of the variance by putting in a lot of time. And that's like the main thing with poker anyway, like you know that the more hands you play per month, the less likely you are to be running above or below EV, because you're putting in a larger sample. So you're more likely to reach like the expected value that you're actually supposed to be at over a large sample. Also card distribution as another factor to think about. Let's say you play like 10k hands per month. The amount of variance that you experience is actually like huge over 10k hands. So if you, as you start to increase the number of hands you play, let's say you play 30, your probability of losing, given that you're a winning player, will start to decrease. So the more hands you're able to play and maintain that win rate, the better your win rate will be. Or the better like your chance of not losing will be actually. You want to end up working out whether it's a good idea to put in like not much volume and work on your win rate. You have to compare stuff. maybe check calling here. Getting a bunch of spam in the chat, but well, sometimes I guess that will happen, right? Part of streaming on Twitch. So as I was saying, the more hands you're able to play, the more you're able to overcome the variance. So if you look at a variance sim, like, you'll know, fuck, that's like a lot of variance if I don't play much. So you do need volume as part of like making money. Definitely go and check out what's going on with those podcasts like that Joey has. There's a lot of good interviews there. It'll give you a lot of insight in terms of how much work you need to actually put in to get decent at this game, and I think it's quite useful in that regard. How much volume should someone put in at minimum each month? Probably like at least 3 hours, 4 hours a day. Some people obviously just think that you need to play a fuck ton, but that's not true either. So I think anything over 90 is like pretty reasonable, but it's difficult to like put in tons of volume, especially when you're learning. Like, you'll encounter at some point some mental game barriers. I remember one of the first limitations that I had was kind of like a fear of failure kind of thing that was going on, and what happened is I felt like I wasn't good enough to play, so I just didn't play and ended up just studying the game a lot and not playing enough, when I would have benefited a lot from actually just playing. So if I actually played more, I probably would have been able to get in enough of a sample and get in enough hands to actually learn and improve faster. But that was a mental game issue that I had when I started. I don't really have that one anymore. I think it's definitely more difficult to overcome the mental game side of things than it is to overcome some of the technical aspects of play. So again, like, if we keep using Limitless as like an example, then you'll realize that it's just really important to have a good mindset when you're playing. What are my thoughts on PLO for long-term success? More money than No Limit, or sort of irrelevant? I think there's a lot of money in PLO, and there will be for a pretty long period of time. It's a question of, do people go and, like, will people start to play that game more and more over No Limit? And if yes, then it's probably a good idea to start learning that. I mean, even myself, I'm considering spending a bit more time into learning that game. But for now, I'm just going to play more No Limit and move up in No Limit. Continue developing my skill in this until I feel like it's better for me to play PLO. So in terms of PLO, there's some pretty decent games running for me, one being the PP Poker Club games, and then also once I have like a much bigger role, I'll be able to play the 5-5-10 or like bigger PLO live games that run in Australia in the Star Casino. Sometimes they run up to like 25, 50, 100, and or like I think it's like 50, 50, 100 blinds. But basically, pretty crazy games in Australia and high variance. Definitely need quite a decent roll. $100k hands a month minimum, the only way to go. 100k hands at 200 with 10 BB win rate, 20k profit each month. Well, that's one way to think about it, but also realize that sometimes you can't get that many hands in because at some periods of time the games just don't run, or they don't run with enough people, and then it ends up being like reg versus reg and your win rate might be lower. But basically, yeah, sometimes you can't meet those volume goals, and sometimes if you play too much your win rate will start to decrease because you're getting tired. So for me, maintaining my win rate, it's going to be a lot more difficult if I try to play 10 hours a day or something like that and get like a high amount of volume in, than if I play less hours and then go and spend some time studying so that I can eventually move up to 500 NL and 1k NL. So I'm still like trying to grow my role. I'm still working on my game, developing strategy, doing all kinds of stuff like that, and I will end up playing higher eventually. But if I like just go full grind mode, it can be the case that, okay, maybe the people I'm playing against actually start improving and then my win rate drops. So still gotta keep doing things, still gotta keep improving, and end up having like better skills, and then money coming as like a secondary result or side effect of becoming better and being able to put in more volume, and while maintaining that same win rate. Pretty clear fold on the river when the ace completes the straight, making a large part of his check back, well, check flop, check turn range improve. Also, let's not forget that there's variance in this game, so it's not variance free 20k per month, even if you play 100k hands. But that's definitely possible if you play these kinds of stakes and have a good win rate. I'm just gonna say it's more in the lines of like 10k a month than it is like 20k a month. But then also for me, money isn't exactly like the main goal of playing poker. It's also having a bunch of freedom to do other things with my time. More people need to move up to 500 NL to help the game run. Yeah, well, I'm getting there, guys. I'm getting there. But 500 NL zone should run soon. Soon enough. If we do enough marketing. If we get enough people banking tournaments. I want to play right now, but 0 in the pool, yeah. This one's close. I'm probably gonna fold 8s and call 9s. we've got these true or false tax questions going on. Because someone's studying for accounting, maybe? With this kind of bet sizing that he picks, we'll need to be calling quite often. And on this kind of turn, I like just betting small because a lot of his range can't really continue. So it kind of challenges him to find the right frequency of check calls. Also allows us to value bet a bit more thin, so we can include some pocket pairs in that range that aren't the 6 or the 9. I think a lot of people don't really have that same luxury as me of like not having to like just constantly put in hours and hours to make ends meet. So I'm really grateful that I have that kind of freedom from poker, having developed my skill set to a high enough level to afford me that freedom. River gonna go for the bluff. Merlin says I have trouble beating 25 in Nelson, so I can't imagine the skill required to beat 500. I mean, the skills are not that different. Well, the skill set is like, you will get there if you incrementally improve over time in a consistent manner. That's the thing that people don't get. It's if you can find a way to basically improve yourself even like 1% a day, you can compound that level of improvement into like something huge over a longer period of time. So even if you're just working on one spot per day in poker and that's the only thing you did, that's considered an improvement. And if you improve slowly over time, you'll have a very noticeable improvement at the end of, let's say, 1 or 2 or even 3 years time. And that's the thing that a lot of athletes know. You kind of just train, and you're not going to get immediate results from just training once, for example, especially with weights, right? You can't just go from 0 to hero in a session. Same with poker. Like, people don't understand that training your body is quite similar to training your mind in many ways. So if I talk a bit more about my background, I mean, you guys might be able to guess that I was actually quite involved in certain sports. So, like, the type of training that's required from you when you're trying to compete in sports, even in high school, is quite intense. And especially when you want to get really, really good at something, you have to train at a certain level of intensity. We could actually consider maybe bluffing that one, but it is an ace high hand. So it has some showdown, and technically you're not meant to be bluffing it because of that. River, I think we can actually bet this here to fold out better pocket pairs. It's probably one of the worst hands in our range. You weren't involved in any physical sports, that's for sure, so it was either chess or nothing. Mate, I actually did play chess. It's kind of funny. The sports I were involved in, 1 swimming, 2 rowing. I don't think you guys understand how much, unless you've done rowing, you don't understand how much effort that is. Like, get up at like 5 in the morning and go and row like 4 days a week. Train really fucking hard. I mean, obviously I don't have the same physique as I used to because I'm not putting in as much time doing that, but man, those days were tough. Tough on the body. But what it teaches you is, it teaches you that you can actually do a whole ton of stuff that you didn't think was possible. You can really push yourself a lot further once you know that a lot of the limits that you thought you had were psychological. Is it ever possible to be on the same table with yourself since you play too? Well, no. That'd be really bad programming if they could make that happen. Interesting, because if I reflect on kind of the skill sets that I've developed in the past, I definitely realize that I could have gone a lot further with a few of them if I kind of just stuck to things, which is kind of what I'm doing now. Is I've gotten to that point of self-awareness where I realize, okay, well, maybe I could have been like an Olympic level athlete if I stuck with like swimming, for example. So before I did rowing, I used to do a lot of swimming as well, and I think, what did I get to? I got to like 29 seconds for 50 meters butterfly when I was like 15, 16. Which is pretty good for that age. But I didn't end up continuing with doing that for a bunch of different reasons. But it's interesting when you realize, okay, well, you could have taken it further, but you didn't. And, well, I have my own reasons for not doing that, but it's good to have the confidence in yourself to know that you can actually get to a really high level at something, or even like multiple things, and then because of that you know that you can probably replicate it in another field if you really give it your all. Default, this will be a 4-bet call. since he should be jamming quite a bunch of his ace kings. And obviously we're just going to get it in. I know that sometimes this line's taken with aces, sure, but it's just a default like stack off kind of situation there. Once we put that much in the pot, and yes, his range can contain ace king. Like, it doesn't matter what size he bets. I've seen plenty of people just 5-bet that sizing with ace king and call off rather than just jamming it in, but occasionally, yeah, it will be an induce with aces. Those aren't really the spots where you make like a ton of your edge. You ran 10k under EV when you were playing hypers. Did you start questioning the software, whether it was reading the EV line right? Well, it is very apparent in game that I actually just ran like shit. Queen's not good enough there. You were saying yesterday how you folded something like ace king versus something in a similar line. Well, it was a bit of a different spot. So in terms of people 5-bet shoving early position versus early position, it's a bit different. Because in that particular situation, they can be calling ace king pre as an IP raiser rather than 5-bet jamming, whereas in this kind of situation, people are basically playing 5-bet or fold over calling the 4-bet. It's also different when you have ace king compared to when you have queens, like equity wise. Don't win the flip. So that's 2 pre-flop spots. Here obviously, again, it's different when someone's out of position compared to when they're in position in terms of the ranges that you can stack off, given the ranges that they're jamming in pre with. So like in that spot, I'm expecting someone to be stacking off something like queens plus ace king, and if you 4-bet, then you generally have the odds to call a jam with ace king there. Especially when some people are mixing in some traps with aces and kings, well not kings, but generally you'll see some people trapped with aces pre as well, so that makes it more of a call off. Depends on the games you're playing in. Usually with the pre-flop spots, I spend a bunch of time modeling them using software, doing all the math, and then in game I'm usually not gonna try and figure it out on the spot. So it's something like I go and figure out off table rather than on table. So generally that involves, okay, looking at how much is in the pot, how much you need to call, what their range looks like for taking each action, and then coming to a conclusion based on that. I'm gonna be turning this into a bluff. Okay. Yes, he got us. I think turn is like a spot where most people, when they check, will just be giving up, so on the river anyway. So usually it's a line where people are quite a lot more capped. Well played by him. Although probably not GTO to be raising and then checking the turn. Merlin says in order to figure out stack off, do you need massive amounts of VB analysis? You could do it that way. Generally, you'll make a set of assumptions and you'll see how those assumptions affect your ranges when you change them. Here we're just betting to get called by king queen pretty much. Lord C-Mine says I'd be getting tilted up these hands. I mean, for me, I don't really see any reason to be tilted. I'm playing every hand fine. I'm making the best decision I can, so like what are the rest I can't really control, so no reason to be fussed over it. It's just a waste of energy and a distraction. Wow. Open just calls and then, well, it's probably something like ace king, but yeah, we're just gonna go with fold. Generally I prefer squeezing to calling that hand, given that there's many players behind left to act, so although it is a hand that you can probably call, I'm still usually preferring to squeeze in that spot. Gonna be defending this one. I'm just going to check down. Merlin says rebuilding his role. Wow, 300 to 1.3 to 310. That sounds like aggressive bankroll management to me. Well, it looks like it anyway. Looks like it's getting a little bit dark, so we're going to turn on the light. You can actually probably check some of our kings in this spot. It looks kind of weird, but the idea is we don't really need much protection, and we also give our opponent an opportunity to bluff into us as well as to improve to a worse hand. So like in this kind of spot, I'd say that his range is weighted towards a lot of one pair type hands. And you can also, like, sure the 4 is a straight, but like we're not really perceived to be value betting very thin there, or to have many hands that can value bet, so I think it's reasonable to try and get a cry call from him. Well, it's a 6 to 10 buy-in per limit, go big or don't go at all. Well, I mean, sometimes shot taking works out, sometimes it doesn't. I always recommend to not do it. And if you are going to short take, you need to move down aggressively. Like very, very aggressively, you move up and down. Usually it's just not worth it. You're better off realizing that this game is a long-term game and that your goal is to basically reduce the amount of variance that you're exposing your bankroll to, while maintaining an ability to actually capitalize on your edge by being able to play enough hands, putting enough volume. And also when you're playing, like playing at a pretty decent level. So was planning to bet this on the turn and then bluff on like the Diamond River, but giving up. I guess you can also use Ace Queen. I think that line's kind of reasonable. So yeah, just no reason to be so aggressive usually. Like in the past, when I was younger, I used to be really aggro with my roll, and I like if it's something I look back on, it's something that I regret doing, because yes, like sometimes in some cases it did work out for me, but in other times it kind of just fucked me over and forced me to like restart. So I always lean towards being a bit more conservative nowadays. And if you are going to be aggressive, do it in the right situations. So for example, I wouldn't be shot taking on a weekday. I'd always shot take on let's say a Friday or Saturday night, just because there'll likely be more fish. So my win rate is higher, so it actually does make sense for me to shot take. In micros, it does, like, look, it can be a good idea to be aggressive to overcome the rake, but once you get to 25 or 50 NL, like, what the fuck are you doing being more aggro? Like, you can just sustain a decent income already, so if you move down, you're back to making less than minimum wage per hour playing this game, and that really hurts you. One buy-in per limit your system. And that's how you start off. I think everyone's like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna deposit 50 online and play 50 NL, and if I bust, whatever. But then you're like, wait a minute, I need a lot more money than that to be playing that game. And if you ever want to try to do this professionally, you need to actually manage your money correctly, which doesn't happen by shot taking aggressively. I mean, we have one of our worst kickers, but we can probably mix in a check raise check kind of line here when he's betting so small. Otherwise, we kind of just let him get to free showdown too cheap. So yeah, that's like the bankroll management thing is like the biggest difference between being a pro and being a rec. There's just no way you can like overcome bankroll management by like playing better. If you don't do it correctly, you just get fucked, no matter how good you are. Because eventually that bad run will come, and you better have a way of dealing with it. And this is coming from experience, guys. This is coming from a guy who shot took aggressively, who had like a good shot, ran it up and down. Like, basically I'll explain my story. But started playing 150s, $1.50 I mean, buy-ins, and kind of ran it up and got to let's see, playing the Sunday Million every week, and then fucking back down to 25 NL cash games. So basically, like, just like in trading, you actually, like, yes, there is bigger risk and bigger reward. You can't be afraid to put your money, blah blah blah, when you have an edge, blah blah blah. But at some point you got to realize that in some cases you don't have as big of an edge as you think, i.e. Merlin folding 70% to C bets. Other times, like, you do have an edge and you should try to push that edge, but sometimes it's better off thinking about what can happen if you actually fuck up. Okay, well, probably calling ace king suited, folding ace king offsuit. Rake is retarded, blah blah blah. Yeah, rake is pretty crazy, sure. Doesn't mean like you want to risk a particular type of roll to short take. Gonna triple here. I guess like we probably want a spade, but having a 9 is also kind of fine. So like, think about when it makes sense to risk a lot of your roll. Well, in some cases you have a fallback plan that allows you to basically be a bit more aggressive. This one's just a jam pre. So the fallback plan is essentially, let's say you have a job you can fall back on to make minimum wage, right? Or you have another type of fallback plan which gives you like the equivalent of a certain amount of income at a given stake. So if, let's say I'm trying to maintain, let's say I need to maintain making at least 40 an hour or something, right? To maintain my standard of living, then my shot taking should never put me in a situation where I won't be able to play that particular game. So in that particular game could be, let's say, 100-0, right? So if I want to avoid ever having to drop down to 100-0, I will always allocate, let's say, 50 or 60 buy-ins aside just in case I get wrecked. So you want to have like a max, I guess in terms of a trading perspective kind of thing, you want to have a max drawdown that you're going to allow yourself to have. So in Merlin's example where he goes from 310 to like 1.3 or whatever, back down to 310, I probably would have set, let's say, okay, maybe if I hit 750 at 25-0, I'm not going to, at like 50-0, I'm going to move back down to 25-0, and then if I hit 25-0 and have a downswing, I'm going to continue moving down. That's the kind of approach that you need to have. So if we think about it, in some cases having a downswing can basically mess you up because it affects the future EV that you have in over a particular amount of time. I'm going to be raising this one versus donk. Pretty good turn to continue bluffing on. So yeah, what I mean by that, let's say it's, okay, my current win rate allows me to make, let's say, 50 an hour. Well, my alley is probably, my hours leads definitely more than that, but let's just use 50 as an example. If I put myself in a situation where I can't make that 50 an hour because I took a shot and I have to move down and it didn't work out, and I had a downswing, then I'm stuck with making 25 an hour for like another 20, 30, 40, maybe 100 hours, maybe more, to get back to that 50 an hour level. So there's an opportunity cost associated with having to move down that can affect your EV. And in some cases that can be really, really detrimental. So try to, I mean, in some ways there's kind of two components to like thinking about stuff. Think about the best case scenario, think about the worst case scenario, right? And then ask yourself the question, is the worst case scenario really worth it? And for some people it is, then if it is, go for it. Scared money don't make money. There's that component of things, and then there's just the other component, which is realizing that shotting with 10 buy-ins is, like, in many ways just too aggressive and kind of well, it's too aggressive, as well as it's also just like going to lead to bad results very, very often. So I'll give you an example. I mean, I had a friend who basically stopped going to uni to play poker because he ran it up. He banked a tournament. He had a 100k roll, so he could go and, well, he had more than that, but he could basically go and travel and play live tournaments, and then he went through a very, very severe downswing. And that basically just forced him to not be able to continue pursuing poker as a career in a short period of time. Let's just say that he bubbled every fucking tournament that he played, so that it happens. It can happen. It's the worst case scenario, but it did happen. I mean, who knows, maybe he could have had $1 million if you actually ran good, right? But people take their chances. Sometimes there are consequences. You never hear about like the tons and tons of people who never made it. You have a survivorship bias, so you feel like you'll be that survivor that will actually make it, but that's not happening very, very often. It's usually not happening, to be honest. I'm gonna fold here on the river. I don't think it's a great spot to bluff catch, so leaning towards a fold there. So yeah, most of the time you guys have never heard of the situations in which people actually tried and fucked up, or it just didn't work out for them. And if you go and ask them, like, do they regret it? Some people will say no, which is completely fine, but the main thing that you guys should be focusing on is what I call counterfactual regret minimization, and what other people will also call that. What it means is you're basically focusing on reducing the amount of regret that you experience in your life. So in some cases that can be, yes, just fucking go for it, YOLO, right? Scared money don't make money. That's an approach to the CFR, right? CFR is also an algorithm that you can use when you're trying to calculate Nash equilibrium solutions for poker, funnily enough. It's important that you guys kind of understand this concept, especially if you're playing a game like this or involved in this kind of thing, because, well, you're gonna have to make a lot of tough decisions. And it's kind of up to you. You have to decide, okay, will I end up regretting this decision or will I not end up regretting this decision? And that's something that is like a very personal thing. Do we get called by worse here? Probably not. I don't think people check back many king X in this spot. Also, having the spade is like a little bit bad. Some people will actually bet 9x on the flop. But yeah, just because I have the spade, guys, just because I have the spade, makes it below average bluff catcher. So I'm just gonna fold that. How soft is the game on this side? I mean, you can watch it and come to your own conclusions. I think it's a pretty good game. Merlin asking, do you believe in me? Well, right now I don't know enough about how you play and approach the game to come to that conclusion. Whether that's a yes or a no. And we're betting again. Unblocking hearts. And he actually calls us with ace-2 offsuit, which should not even be in his pre-flop calling range, but somehow is, highlighting that he was probably a fish. But generally I'm going to be taking that line there, regardless. I think we get enough folds. What's the name of this concept? Sounds very interesting and I want to read about it. But yeah, Melon, I think if you're watching the stream consistently and you're putting in a lot of the time studying, I think you'll get there. That's what I believe. So if we continue talking about this concept of regret minimization, it's very, very simple. If I could have done something over again, what would I have done differently? Usually it's like that simple of a question, right? So it's like, should I have shot taken this spot? Well, yeah, I probably should have shot taken this spot because, or I shouldn't have taken this because, and then you basically are running sims in your head of what all the different possibilities and basically averaging everything out and coming to that conclusion. Most of our range doesn't actually want to raise on this turn, I suppose, so we're probably mainly playing this as a check. Was considering maybe leading the river, because I don't think he might value bet as thin as he should, but yeah. Went with the check. Could have gone for an exploiter to lead there, I think. So I guess like if you think about things like if you look at some of my decisions, it's like, okay, why did I decide to pursue playing poker professionally? Why did I decide to stream on Twitch? Well, I basically thought about all the factors, or try to think about as many factors that I can that are important in making that decision. So for me, it's like, well, if I go and get a job, I'll probably regret not having had the opportunity to at least try playing poker professionally and give that a go. And well, in some cases, if I do actually go and get a regular job and do everything like that and then play poker on the side, well, I probably am going to feel like let's think about this river spot. That's big on the turn. Like, the thing is, having no spades in our hand, with many draws possible, and the queen pairing on the river, this is probably a call. Kind of sucks that he actually picks the worst sizing that he can with that hand and gets max value from us, but happens. It happens. Sometimes you just get owned. Sometimes you just get owned. So trying to get back to what I was saying. Yeah, I compared basically a bunch of different options, and for me, I just thought, okay, well, worst case for me if I do actually play professionally is, okay, maybe I give up, like, if it doesn't work out for me, maybe I give up a year or something like that, maybe 2 years. I set myself back a little bit, but I have fun doing what I enjoy. And if I go and work, well, I might end up in a situation where I just really hate everything that I'm doing. Or it might be like, okay, I have some freedom, I can still play poker. That was another way to think about it. But then I asked, okay, well, in the long run, is it really worth it to go that route now? Or is it better to like wait and do that? And I think given like my current age, it's just better to go out and experiment and see what everything's like. That's why I'm doing Twitch, right? I mean, I could always do Twitch later, but I think when I think about why I'm doing it, it's like very simply, okay, maybe in a year's time or 2 years' time, could be longer, I regret not taking up this opportunity to help other people to kind of see what kind of players are and what the community in the poker world is like, and also to improve the quality of the ecosystem by just creating a kind of community where people are a lot more positive, where people, well, I guess like in poker it's like, okay, you're teaching people how to make better decisions, right? So if I'm teaching you how to get better at poker, I'm probably teaching you I'm creating more people in the world that are going to be making good decisions. And I think that is like definitely like a net benefit to society as well. Very clear call on the river. Always thought of having a normal job in life, but something exciting about playing poker professionally. You guys talking about League of Legends. I spent quite a lot of time playing that game, and I still play it occasionally. It's a fun game to play when you feel like relaxing. That is, if you can stand the toxicity of the community. I think the bot there is pretty good once flop checks through. Just because both players are going to be kind of capped. So, hard for them to cool down. Elo how exists, you can't carry a bad team. I think if you're good enough, you probably could. Have to mute everyone. That's one way to solve all your problems. Well, I'm just going to be jamming ace-jack here. Occasionally we'll run into queens or a set or something, but I think we still will get caught by worse. Do you feel like the immediate EV of coaching is better than the EV of not coaching? Wait, I'm going to try and read that. Do you feel like the immediately EV of coaching is better than the more plus EV of not coaching is just... I just... that sentence doesn't really make sense. So I'm going to try and answer your question in what I'm going to interpret it as. So I'm guessing you're asking about whether coaching is going to be a good idea given that I'm making the games worse or something like that in the longer run, but I guess for me, if I see myself continually improving, I'm just not going to be worried about giving away so much information that it's going to hurt me. What rank have I got in League? Right now I think I'm like gold something. I don't really play much. The highest I got was like flat 1. But again, like if I want to climb the League of Legends ladder, I'll just have to play so much. And I'm not really keen on doing that. So like I might climb over time if I play every now and then, but just not expecting to like get really, really high level there. Sorova seems like a check to me. Plenty of hands in his range that can play as a check back. That contain a 10. theory-wise, it's probably a call though. Like, okay, what the fuck is he doing? Does he not realize that there's a 4 straight on the board? It's so strange. So like I'm like there when I see the 10, I'm just thinking about like a bunch of factors, like the fact that this bet sizing is on the smaller side, so he can potentially be betting merged hands. Also thinking that some 10x might actually bet the flop, and the ones that do check back we have card removal too, so if he's going to check back a 10, it's going to be a hand like 10-9 or 10-8, and we have a 9 and an 8 in our hand, so that makes it kind of good to play that as a call. Here I don't think we need to be bluff catching. Wow, folds ace king, what a nit. What a nit. How can you fold ace king, man? How can you fold ensure? That's just disgusting. Guys, he put us on the nuts. As a default, I think just betting small there with queens is pretty standard. You can probably mix in a trap occasionally, but since we're a bit deeper, I still want to build the pot, and checking back doesn't really accomplish that. Folds ace king suited puke Lamau at 200 simple still, yeah. This player pool is atrocious sometimes. It's a lot more fun to play on this side though than ACR. ACR is just full of regs. I mean, sure, they're still not that great, but they're better than this pool, so there's more win rate here. What we are folding ace king suited now, heads up for that pot, what? Apparently this player pool is, like, they're mixing in some folds. Whoops, made it a little bit big. But that's fine. Usually I'm making it like 47. Min raise, oh. I think this is a fold still, like 7-5 offsuit's probably the bottom of my range. think you are the first and only reg I've come up against. Huh. Have you guys seen the video of the super nit folding aces in a $1 MTT? Bro, you gotta balance your folding range. What are you doing if you aren't balancing your folding range? What kind of win rate would you need to have on ACR to justify playing there over Ignition? Granted, they have rake back and rake race. The main trade-off that you make is basically this. So if you want the rake back and the rake race, you need to put in probably like 100 hours a week, which is quite a lot of volume. I mean, not 100 hours a week, what am I saying? But you probably need to put in like at least 40 hours a week. And that will probably lower your win rate. It also means you have to be really consistent with how much you're playing. So the trade-off there is very simply put. I have to play more, and because I have to play more and be consistent, I have less time to do other things. Also, like the traffic as well, right? So if you add that all up, like you can probably make a decent amount just off rake back, but you're not getting as much time to basically improve on your game because you can't study as much, you need to grind. And if you do grind, you can't take time off to make sure you get those leaderboard points and the rake race points. So not really suited to what my personality is about, which is more low volume, higher quality play. So I am personally going to be seeking higher win rate over like the monetary side of things. Theory wise, we're probably calling this practice. Probably just overfold to check raise. This is a hand we can just fold straight away. Do you always open 2.5x? Yep. Gonna get rid of this annoying like cog thing, just spinning around, not being very helpful. Yeah, I do 3x small blind versus big. I think that's like the only situation where I'm 3xing, and it's like pretty obvious why, because, well, you're gonna be out of position when you open from the small blind, so you want to reduce the amount of hands that your opponent can play profitably against you, and you also want to reduce the stack to pot ratio, because lower SPR will favor, well, will be a bit better for you when you're playing out of position. It's so much better without the cog. Nearly as annoying as the guy folding ace-king suited, yeah. Man, how does he fold pre? But it actually is good for us because he had the suited combination. Do you feel like I asked too many questions? Not really. Specs. I'm gonna have to dig those up and post them somewhere, eh? I have a pretty decent computer. It's a gaming desktop. It's got 16 gig RAM, it's got a GTX 1080 Ti. What else do I want to talk about? I can't remember the exact CPU that I have. What are your plans after 200 NO, 500 NO, live MTTs? Bunch of different ideas. I open jam all my ace king for 100 BB. That's a good strategy. Just a 1080 Ti, yeah, no big deal. Gaming desktop. I wonder if you can guess what that guy called with in the 10's hand. I'll reveal it in a sec, but I just want to see what you guys think he called with. $500 no reg tables then ignition doesn't have zoom. Yeah, definitely gonna throw in a few reg tables. Probably need my overlay to like change a bit if I do that. I'll continue streaming 200 NO obviously, but in my own time I'll be playing 500 when that happens. Like, this format's just really good for streaming. Also tournaments as well, I guess. OpenFold freeze versus raise from I'm not sure which hand you're talking about. I think at one point there were at least like 25 people playing 500 the other day. So it has started to run a few times. So here we go. If you take a quick look. Open, free bet call, check call flop, check turn, bet he calls river, and he had ace jack. Amazing, right? Amazing. You had freeze on right table, villain opens UTG, and you folded from cutoff. Yeah, Very standard fold from the cutoff. It's not a hand that's profitable against UTG with additional players behind to act. So if you're not familiar with that being the case, then I suggest actually looking into preflop ranges a bit more. if you're gonna shot take, throw in like one table at a time and then add more tables as you get more comfortable with the next stake, or as your bankroll starts to increase. And this will make the transition and the amount of swings you have a lot less severe. So I guess like if you're looking at something like this, right? 25 NL and 10 NL, what's the difference? Well, it's like more than double the buy-in, right? So stop playing like 4 tables of 25 when you shot take, because that's just increasing your risk a lot more. Play 2 tables 25, 2 tables 10. Easy, right? You've reduced your buy-in, you've reduced your average buy-in, you've lowered your risk. Much better to shot take that way. The cash game course on Raise Your Edge is useful for micro players, ? Yeah, it's useful. I didn't make the course though, so a few comments that I'll say. The ranges are kind of outdated, and many of them are not so accurate anymore. I mean, they're still going to be okay at macros, but I'd say they're not the most ideal ranges. Apart from that, the other content is pretty good for micro players. What I'm planning to do is actually, I'm gonna be making some content, probably in the form of a webinar or like a group coaching session of some sort in the future. If you're interested, definitely send me a message telling me that you are. Basically, here's the way it will go down. So I'll probably take something like 5 to 10 people, and every session will cost $50. Like, it's pretty much gonna be a course that's not like a prepared course, but like a webinar type of thing. So over a bunch of weeks, I'll walk you guys through different parts of the game, starting with pre-flop, of course, and then going into more detailed type of stuff, going into a lot of that. So yeah, it'll probably cost around 50 per session per person, and I think that'll be pretty good, affordable way for you guys to get coaching from me that you wouldn't be able to pay for hourly. What that does though is it means that you're not going to get as personalized coaching as you might if you're taking one-on-one from me. If you're taking one-on-one, like, no doubt you're going to just get more value that way, because I can kind of focus on your own specific leaks or specific questions rather than trying to do something a bit more general. Can we see your graph? I'm kind of afraid to open the graph right now because it might crash the software for streaming, so I might do that at the end. So if you stay towards the end of the stream, which will probably be another 10 minutes, then I can show you it. Is 10% UTG opening range too tight? Yep. 6 max, yes. 9 max, that's probably about right. But yeah, 10% is quite a tight range. I'm opening somewhere around 17-18% of hands. Freeze is a fold card of first UTG when you play raise or fold, or in general. In general, like, if you're including a cold core range, it's probably going to be something like 6s or 7s plus. And 3s is just never going to make it into that range at 100 BB. since that hand just doesn't play very well. I mean, you can probably call it if you're on a table with like everyone behind you being a fish. That's on the passive side, since you'll get to over-realize your equity a bit more. But yeah, that's like a table-based adjustment. So like in a live poker game, there are probably situations where you can cold call threes pre-flop because the rest of the table is a bunch of fish. $7 to 18% UTG, no way is that loose standard or what? Pretty standard. Pretty standard. Anywhere between 15 and 20 is reasonable. 20 being on the loose side. So right around the middle. Pretty standard, kid. Man, you guys learn to coexist, please. Seems like a call versus sizing. And I'm going to be betting. Okay. Well, we have a pretty clear fold. If games are weaker, you open looser. Yeah. The Grinder's Manual. Yeah, it's a pretty decent read. Like old poker books, it's already outdated. But, well, especially the ranges. The ranges are just like wrong. But it's a good way to start, usually. You learn the fundamentals of the game pretty well. I'm gonna go with the hero fold here. I don't think he's gonna be bluffing enough. Yeah, you can find free ranges everywhere. Start with Poker Snowy. The thing is, like, yes, you can find free ranges everywhere, but doesn't mean those ranges are gonna be good. But yeah, like, as I said many times in the stream, start with Poker Snowy. and that will get you like a good baseline of what kind of hands you should be playing. It's on the tighter side, but it's still pretty solid. What do you think about iPoker games? Haven't really played on those sites, so have no idea what they're like. Because what kind of porn do you watch? At the moment, I don't watch any. Kind of given up on that kind of thing. I think it's a habit that just doesn't really serve you in any way. Against half pot, I think we can just fold this. I mean, we do have the club, so probably theory-wise it might be a call. But it's a very, very marginal one. Yeah, no time for that when you've got to play poker. How do you survive? I was sick, then Updog quit streaming, didn't have the heart like this. Huh. That feel. When you talk shit about someone and they're watching the stream. You used to be hated by every community you joined. Kind of a marginal spot. I guess you can maybe find the call, given that these guys are both likely to be fish. Board texture while I check some of my kings. The spade combination obviously is more of a check than the one without the spade for protection reasons, but then there's different ways to think about that one. In some cases it's like slightly better to bet the one with the backdoor flush draw than without, just because of EV. Turn where we'll be checking with a 10 pretty often. Hey, I'm looking for a new Asian poker player to follow. My red guy's been slacking. Well, I'm here pretty much every day. So, welcome. Can't get 3 streets of value, easy check. He has 18 behind. We're just gonna bet small and then jam the turn. And river, we should just check when the king comes. I mean, if a blank comes, we can try and value bet this against 9x and 6x, but it's kind of thin otherwise, since it's difficult to get called by worse. Am I Korean? No, I'm not Korean. My ethnicity is Chinese. All Aussies are Chinese. Mate, you haven't been to Strathfield. It's pretty much like a second Korea in many ways. So you play poker for a living? Yeah. Kids are in love with the accents. It's a bit larger than usual. Usually you see 20 EV for 3-bet. Some people are starting to go a bit larger, like myself. Actually does make it a bit awkward for you to full bet if you size up a little bit. I think we can just fold this, maybe. Maybe in theory it's hero code sometimes, I'm not sure. Could probably just check this again, but generally I'm finding that just betting out is gonna perform better than checking again, so I'm going with what I think is the better option. Obviously, if you always bet that hand, then people could exploit you. But we're playing anonymous here. People just typically underbluff this spot, so I don't really like calling, although GTO it probably include some calls with this hand. It's just that people will play that board so differently to the way it's supposed to be played. Honestly, jamming 100 pre in zone is not the worst idea. Except, how often do you need to get it to work? Did you play on stars before it got banned? Yep, I did. Because you can try that out and tell me how it goes. I'm sure there are more profitable ways to play this game though. Gonna try right now at 5-0. Good luck. How much longer are you playing? Probably another... Right now it's 6:07, probably till 6:30. And not going to be bluffing the river. I think he needs to think about how he's going to construct his range there a bit better if he's calling ace-8 versus the overbet. Ace-8 with no flush draw. Yeah, you can totally snipe me by the way if the pool gets small, so feel free to do that. It's a challenge too though. Pretty clear jam. And we get called. So win a stack. Guess he had the right idea with 2 pair to value bet. Just got a bit unfortunate. I do think it's kind of thin, given that the backdoor flush got there, the straight also got there. Obviously, bet calling is just atrocious. Good run out. Yeah, I'm not loving the call here, but we'll call 6s against this sizing and try to get to showdown. On this turn against the sides, we're probably calling once. And it becomes like a snap jam. Can Europe play on ignition? I don't think so. Oh yes, Golgo man, I gotta talk to you about getting some of the additional streaming stuff in. Kind of thinking I need to do a few more things, get a few more additions in, so could include a new overlay and like other streaming related stuff as well. 4-bet, pretty standard, and ace high. I'm just gonna bet small to try and fold out some of the better ace highs and then maybe some pairs occasionally. It's like our worst ace highs, so we probably can try to bluff a bunch of them. 4-bet pot. Start with a small bet. And calling off, of course. Flipping on the flop, I think? Yeah, something like that. End up winning the flip. So, pretty happy with that one. Catching some heat towards the end. It's amazing what people call jams with in these games. Gonna 5-out 200 0 with my 1 buy-in after watching the stream. You guys realize how hard it is to snipe someone even with a minute delay? Like, you basically have to pay attention to every fucking hand. While watching the stream. this is probably one of the worst straight draws that we have, so I'm just gonna fold it, especially when there's now a flush draw on the board. I mean, there's some value in betting this, maybe, but like, based on how people's check back ranges look, it's probably a better hand to just go with a check line. And yeah, I mean, kings is obviously one of those like main hands that they'll have in their range. So we get stacked. No big deal. Like, river, I'm even like thinking, okay, well, if I raise here, do I get called by worse? It's still like a raise in theory, assuming that he's checking back enough top pair to play as a delay c-bet and then calling off a raise on the river with. So I think it's still probably a jam, but based on how his range construction or like the average player's range construction might look there, it's a bit dicey. It's a bit dicey. I'm not surprised that kings is part of his range, but it's like, alright, whatever. I was definitely, I guess, prepared for that outcome to occur. Oh snap, hope that doesn't happen to my one buy-in. Yeah. I mean, expect the worst, guys. Expect the worst. Yeah, that's probably one of the reasons I wouldn't recommend one buy-in shots, or even like not having that many buy-ins to take a shot, because that shit will happen. Often it does. Okay. Kind of random, Kizza. Kind of random. I'll try and remember that. This is just a fold pre. It's a pretty large sizing. Wait a sec, he doesn't recommend one buy-in shots, unfollow. Probably just calling here. And giving up. Not a run out where we'll be bluffing that one. Hope if this stream like teaches you anything, it's that, well, if you are gonna consider trying to play poker professionally, or if you're gonna try and make any sort of meaningful income from this game, that you really need to be prepared in terms of your mental game to actually handle the swings. So a lot of people are just not gonna be able to stay consistent and play their game properly when they're experiencing a bit of run bad. They might not even be able to play, they'll just sit out. So that will hurt their volume and they won't be able to meet their volume goals. And if they don't meet their volume goals, well, how can they make money if they don't play, right? So if you're a person who's actually like playing, trying to move up, trying to build your role, like you'll encounter all this shit. Just realize when you're doing it professionally, well, you just have to keep going, and that's tough. I believe we fold a lot of those offsuit combos, like King Jack here against 3/4. If he's betting half, then we probably call a lot of them. But we mainly continue with some suited combinations of overcards. Queen 10 check raise doesn't make much sense. Can you explain that? It's pretty simple. People don't continue wide enough. That's as simple as it gets. If you want a detailed explanation, then you can take an hour from me and I'll go through all the sims. Sims to actually explain why that makes sense. Do you ever take shots at live or online MTTs, or do you strictly play cash? If you read a bit more about my background, I started by playing Hyperturbo 6max hit and goes, and then moved to MTTs, and then basically after that, now I'm playing mainly cash. And I don't think it makes too much sense most of the time to be playing tournaments, just because the hourly EV is not as good. Obviously sometimes it's nice to just run it up, but that's the kind of conclusion that I've come to. Instead of poker coaching, will you cyber your client for 1 hour? What do you mean by cyber? Merlin asking, if someone is opening 10% versus 17%, is the player losing money because he's not opening enough through lack of amount of hands played? Generally, yes. You probably, if you're opening the same sizing, then you're probably missing out on some EV with certain hands in your range that can be opened profitably. And that EV is going to someone else. Now, if you're opening a larger sizing, then it might be the case that the 10% range is actually the optimal range for the sizing that you picked. So in that case, well, maybe if you're opening 4x under the gun, it could make some sense to open a 10% range, because you're opening a larger sizing. So the strong hands in your range will be making more, and the marginal hands are making less, so to the point where they might be minus EV to open for that sizing. Which means that, well, the 10% range is fine. It just means that the strategy itself is a bit different. Pretty clear fold though. Rockets again. Sometimes you just don't get action. It's pretty sad. What time is it? Right now it's 6:27, so in about 3 minutes I'm gonna wrap up the stream and get some food. What? King 6 off isn't open from MP? Yeah, apparently. But King 7 off is. So you've been opening a little bit wide, my friend. We can just fold this first. This donk sizing you picked. The larger donk that tends to be a bit more equity driven. Don't forget to share the graph. Am I gonna eat on camera? Don't think so. Hopefully I don't break anything when I'm trying to open the graph. You thought we'd forget. You turn up your mic, up dog usually eats with the mic on full blast. Wow. Asking the real questions. River should probably just be a check. I'm expecting most queen X to barrel the turn. And with this particular 2-pair combination, we have a call. since we're blocking a bunch of the hands like he can actually value bet, like pocket nines. Obviously we just ran into nines, so not much we can do there. A bit unfortunate, like that's the only hand that he has that bets for value. I think King Jack and Jack 8 are probably double barreling most of the time, so a bit unfortunate. Yeah, a bit unfortunate, but what can you do? So let's show the graph. So this is basically my graph. Let's get it over here. All of the hands I've played except the most recent ones on Ignition 200 NL zone. So you can see red line is kind of just breaking even, blue line is doing pretty well, and we're also running under EV, but like can't just always run good, right? So over this sample of hands, running below expectation, but nothing you can do about that. It's completely fine. If over a small sample size you have a few losing sessions. But yeah, anyway, going to be wrapping it up, so see you guys later. Going to be back again tomorrow. Enjoy your one buy and shot, Don.